All right, guys, welcome to today's video where we're going to talk about fishing sponsorships. And in particular, I'm going to respond to a video that Darren at Wendell Fishing did where he got some things right, but he also got a lot of things wrong. All right, so in this video that Darren did called Dirty Secrets, I think, the Dirty Secret, the scam that YouTubers don't want you to know about. All right, so he touched on something that definitely does need to be discussed, especially if you are sponsored, have any intentions of being sponsored, or if you've ever considered being sponsored. And it's a thing called a non-disparagement clause or non-disparagement agreement. And there's a few other things that he didn't talk about in the video that I'll talk about because I've done contracts from both sides, as the company, as a pro staff director on behalf of companies, and then as a athlete or sponsored angler myself. And so the thing about the non-disparagement clause is it doesn't have to be false for you to be in violation of it. So that means you can tell the truth. However, it does have to be disparaging, meaning a simple truth really can't get you in trouble with a non-disparagement agreement. The other thing that it doesn't keep you from doing is it doesn't really keep you from saying what you want to say. It may keep you from staying involved with that company in the future if they don't like it. But really, when it comes down to integrity, if you want to say whatever you want to say, you can say it. And if a company decides that's disparaging commentary or they don't like it, it's probably not a company you should be involved in. A lot of commentary in the comment section of his video was dead on, and a lot of the comments were also like out in left field and show a fundamental lack of understanding of how these contracts work. So I'm going to keep this video as short as I can while also covering this topic, because I do think that Darren lit a fire making a lot of people now suspect of every YouTuber that they've ever watched, and I don't think that's fair. And at the same time, I also think he got some things right. So let's just jump into those. First and foremost, most companies that I've ever dealt with have tried to have some type of non-disclosure agreement or non-disparagement clause in their contracts. From the early days, because I know who I am and how I am, and I know what I want to represent to my audience, I've never signed one. Any contract that's ever had it, I've responded to the company and said, we're either going to take this out, we're going to line it out, or we're going to add some language to it. And 100% of the time, they've been on board with that. Fortunately for me, I was an active duty officer in the Navy at the time, and I wasn't really needing sponsorships. I think the place where people get into trouble is you take a young person who are young in their career, not necessarily young in age, but young in their YouTube career, and they just start making enough money that now they're going to go off on their own. So they're at that point in their career where they decide to go full-time YouTube, okay? And now they've quit their job. They got a family to take care of. They got themselves to take care of. And then one or two sponsorships don't renew. Now all of a sudden it's panic time. And so here's one of the comments that people got wrong. One of the comments said something to the effect of, I don't trust anybody over 25,000 subscribers. Once they're over that, they're sellouts. I actually find that in many cases, it's the other way around. Younger in their career, smaller subscriber channels have a tendency to jump on brand deals easier. People that have worked harder to get to that 100,000+ subscriber mark, 50,000+ subscriber mark, have a lot more to lose, and they're probably doing it full time. But more importantly, they also usually have a little bit more leverage with brands, so they can get away with saying, I'm not doing it, and still get the deal. Whereas in a lot of cases, smaller channels, smaller influencers, younger folks get pressured much more easily because, again, they have to make that revenue. So I can't speak for everyone, but for me personally, I was able to steer clear of those. In fact, I'm going to take it one step further. In a couple of instances, companies wanted to come back after we had a multiple-year career relationship throughout my career, and they've wanted to add in not just non-disparagement clauses, but clauses that say you can't comment on this, you can't comment on that, or we need you to comment on this. One such example was a sponsor wanted me to use my platform to promote social causes that I wasn't really willing to promote. Didn't mean I was against them, didn't mean I wanted to fight against that concept. I just wasn't interested in putting it on my platform. And then they also wanted to put language in that says these are the things you can't talk about. And so for me, a couple of relationships, and some of them were even recently. You might have seen my video where it says I got fired. I didn't really get fired. We just couldn't come to terms on the way we were going to move forward. And this is one of those examples. So I don't know that I could have done that earlier in my career. And so again, I wanted to use that to make the point that sometimes when you've got a bigger channel and you've got more influence, you are able to stick to your guns more versus being a sellout like some of the people in the comment section, and maybe to a certain extent even Darren alluded to a little bit. And I think Darren is doing a phenomenal job of putting his content together. He's doing a great job of doing research, and he's very, very thorough, but he's also only a few years into this thing, hasn't had as many sponsorship relationships as a lot of bigger channels have, and to a certain extent is sometimes suspect because he's a really intelligent dude. And so here's the deal. When it comes down to the non-disparagement clause in particular, you can flat out tell a company, look, I'm going to tell my audience straight. I'm going to tell them what I love. I'm going to tell them what I hate. Perfect example is I have a great relationship with Bonafide kayaks. And anytime I have something that I don't like or I think that a consumer might not like, I basically communicate with them and say, hey, I'm going to say this in my video. And not a single time has Bonafide ever said, no, you can't say that. I don't have a non-disparagement agreement in my contract. And more importantly, they're usually 100% on board with whatever information it is that I'm putting it out. And, you know, it makes sense for everybody. For example, one video that I did is I talked about the P127 not being a great boat for bow mount trolling motors, okay? After getting the boat, after getting out and experiencing it, after taking somebody with my body weight, with the amount of batteries and wiring and all the stuff that you needed to outfit that boat, I just wasn't comfortable endorsing it to my audience as a boat that was a great bow mount trolling motor boat. I communicated that with the folks at Bonafide, and they were 100% on board. They agreed and even encouraged me to not only do the video, but share it. So I do believe that if you have a good relationship with the companies you work with, most of this stuff is a non-issue. I also believe that the better relationship you have, the better you are able to negotiate, right? You're able to say, I don't want that in my contract. Even though you say you won't hold me to it, if you're not going to hold me to it, then don't put it in the contract. So there's been a number of times where I've had to stand my ground on that. Usually it's with smaller startup companies that are trying to go with a bigger influencer, and they're putting such a big percentage of their budget in there that their lawyer, their legal team, somebody in the company is going, we got to really protect ourselves. If you've got to protect yourself against the influencer that's promoting your products, you probably shouldn't be using that influencer. And if you're a person who's got to argue with the company about whether or not you're going to say something disparaging, you probably shouldn't be sponsored by that company. So I think the fundamental thing that people misunderstand is that there are people that jump on sponsorships. I've had a rule my entire career that says, if I don't buy it first, I'm not using it. Now, there's been 2, maybe 3 exceptions to that, okay? I'll give you a particular example. There's been companies that wanted to work with me in the past, but I was in a relationship or I used another product, and they were offered me their product to give it my honest opinion. One such example is Yak rods. I use Shimano rods, G-Loomis rods, and Yak rods reached out to me and wanted me to use their rods. I said, hey, absolutely, send me a few rods. If I like them, I'll buy some more at a discount, or we'll talk about the way forward. I literally fished those rods on and off, implementing them into my arsenal for 6 months, maybe even 8 months, before I did the first video calling them out, because I wanted to make sure they were going to be durable, they were going to satisfy my needs, they were going to be sensitive enough, they were going to live up to the why they're designed for a kayak. And now I love everything about their rods, and there's many trips that the only rods in my quiver are Yak rods. Other such examples are, things like Newport vessels. I reached out to Newport vessels and said, look, I'd love to do kind of a comparison to your motors to those of Torqeedo and other motors on the market. They liked the idea, so they sent me some motors. Other than that, 99% of everything that I've ever done has been a product that I bought. And I tell people all the time, I don't use people's products because I'm sponsored by them. I'm sponsored by them because I use their products. And I know that not everybody's that way. And I know that there's a large demographic of people out there that are so anxious to be sponsored, to put that, pro staff name in their bio on their Instagram page, or, link it up on their Facebook page, or throw that logo on their jersey. But I also think that there's something that people need to really understand about sponsorships, okay? There's a difference between a pro deal, a promotional deal, a pro staff, and a sponsorship. And so a lot of times these days we've really watered down pro staff. Pro staff used to stand for professional staff. It now stands for promotional staff. And in many cases, you can buy your way onto a pro team or buy your way onto a pro staff. And really all that is a discount category. When those people offer you that discount to use their product, they're probably going to put a non-disparagement agreement in there. They're going to tell you can't say anything bad, because if you haven't worked your way up the ladder far enough to be a pro staffer or to be sponsored, you're potentially a liability for them. So the last thing they're going to do is give you a discount and then have to worry about you going out and bashing them, okay? So that non-disparagement agreement usually is more geared towards inexperienced people, or all the way up to the super high level pros. With the super high level pros, the Elite Series pros, the Major League Fishing guys, things like that, they're investing so much money in those guys, they don't need them jumping ship to another sponsorship the next year and then turn around and badmouthing them, because then they've paid them an excessive amount of money. So that's another place that those non-disparagement agreements come into place. Another place that things come into contracts that you may have to navigate is non-disclosure agreements. Non-disclosure agreements are usually designed to keep, or NDAs, are designed to keep you from disclosing things that you might know that the general public doesn't know yet. Trade secrets, manufacturing processes, things like that. And so you're not going to get around a non-disclosure agreement. If a company isn't making you sign a non-disclosure agreement, they're not sharing important information with you, and they don't value you. I'm going to say that one more time. If a company isn't making you sign a non-disclosure agreement, you're probably not somebody that they consider super valuable or a threat. Because if you were, they would make you sign a non-disclosure agreement. A non-disclosure agreement and a non-disparagement agreement are not the same thing. A non-disclosure agreement just means you can't give up secrets. Once it's public, you can talk about it just like everybody else can. So that's generally the differentiation between those two. Here's the rule that I've lived by. If you wouldn't buy it with your own money, if you wouldn't keep buying it if that deal didn't work out, or if you weren't willing to endorse that brand for nothing, why would you do it for money? Okay? So I've lived by that rule. I've actually had companies evolve to where the product was still great, but the people and the decision makers changed, and we've parted ways. I'm going to break my arm, pat myself on the back here, and say I've probably turned down or walked away from more sponsorships than most people have ever gotten or will get. That's not bragging. That's not thumping my chest. That's just the reality of the position that I was in. I was very fortunate to be at the beginning stages of this kayak fishing thing, but I would not compromise my integrity, my character, or any of that for some dollars. I walked away from deals, or I restructured deals to make them more proportionate. And I'm not saying everybody's like that, but what I wanted to do is cover this topic to say, one, I think Darren did a great job of talking about this topic. I think he got a few things right. I think he got a few things wrong. One of those things being that everybody that signs a non-disparaging agreement is a sellout, or that they're scamming you. I've signed agreements in the past based on my understanding with those folks and said, I don't consider this disparagement. We've changed the language, and it went from a non-disparagement agreement to hey, you have to get your content approved first. And that is a hard no. I am not working with companies that force me to give them the content to review for two major reasons. One, if you don't trust me to represent your brand, I shouldn't be representing your brand. Two, most companies are so slow to respond that by the time they approve the content, it's too dang late, and it over complicates the process. So that's been one thing that popped up and that I've refused to do. And if a company puts you in that position, you're better off staying at one of those lower levels until you are more valuable to that company, instead of jumping in as a pro deal, a promotional deal, or even a pro staff where all you're getting is a discount. Once money changes hands and you're truly sponsored, like when they're giving you product for free and they're paying you, this pressure to sign these agreements is going to get potentially higher. but you stand your ground, because if you're valuable enough to that company that they want you representing them, if the content that you create is valuable enough to them, they're going to give you what you want within reason. And a non-disparagement agreement is one of the easiest things to get thrown out of a contract. In fact, I don't know if Darren did it or not, but if he pushed hard enough in the situation he was in, he probably would have got it thrown out the contract. Heck, who knows? He might have, but only wanted to do this video because he knows it would create a lot of content. He knows it would get a lot of clicks and a lot of views and a lot of comments. And there's nothing wrong with that, because these types of discussions are worth having. But I did want to correct a couple things. One, I think that the smaller influencers a lot of times have a bigger tendency to jump on deals where they may be willing to say anything or do anything just to get that deal. And I'm not saying that all big influencers don't do that, but I do think that the more of a following you get, the bigger your community is, you have a lot more leverage in what you can tell companies you will and you won't do. For example, lots of companies want you to put a commercial within the first 30 seconds of their videos. Austin and I recently made a decision. We're just not doing that anymore. You've watched a pre-roll. You've watched the intro. Now you got to turn around and watch another 30-second commercial. Sorry, we're going to work it into the video somewhere where it makes sense, where you've gotten a value proposition out of the video. But those are things that, again, if you have that dialogue with the company, if you work with the company, they'll work with you. And so I think that this topic was worth discussing. I do plan on doing some better videos on sponsorships, how to get them, how to manage them, how to grow them down the road. But for the purpose of this video, I really just wanted to respond to Darren's video because it's getting a lot of views, getting a lot of people worked up in the comment section. You guys definitely go watch his video, listen to what he has to say, jump in on the comment section of his video, and then jump in on the comment section of this video. Let's have a dialogue. In fact, I'll do what I'm doing with some of these other videos, and I'll respond to some of these comments as a short. That way we can keep the dialogue going, because a lot of times we can't think of everything when we're doing these videos. So that reply with a short feature is something that's pretty awesome. And who knows, maybe I'll drag him back on the podcast for another episode where we can discuss this a little bit more in depth. He could put me on the spot. I could put him on the spot. Maybe we'll bring, actually not maybe, we'll also bring one of you knuckleheads on as a member of the community to jump in on the conversation. In fact, the more polarizing your comment, the more likely I'm going to drag you in so we can hear you out and maybe have the opportunity to discuss where you might be right or where you might be wrong. So I know that there's a lot of people suspect of everybody promoting anything these days, and I think if it's done right and it's done correctly, it could be a valuable asset to both the person creating the content and you guys that are watching, because we can save you a lot of time, effort, energy, money, heartache on making purchases, teach you how to do things to fix things that manufacturers do wrong. And by being transparent about it and being forthright and being willing to tell companies, yeah, I'm not signing that, we just have a better community. We have a better relationship, and our endorsements are a lot better received by you guys. And hey, the other thing you could do is just when you see somebody that's obviously not being forthright, just call them out on it in the comment section or ask the question, hey, what do you not like about it? And if they don't respond, then they probably have their hands tied behind their back. You can go through my comments. You can go through all my old videos. If there's something I don't like about a product that I use, not everything's perfect, I'm going to tell you so that you are informed as a consumer before you make that purchase. All right, guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Do me a favor, leave a comment in the comment section. Go check out Darren's video and leave a comment in the comment section of his video as well. And let's get a dialogue going between, both communities.